The difference between living paycheck to paycheck and building a billion-dollar legacy isn't the money in your bank, but the number of years in your vision. Audio crackles to life. The host's voice is warm, resonant, paced like a late-night radio DJ or a philosopher sitting by a fire. There is no rush. Just a steady stream of high-value ideas. Welcome back. I'm glad you're here. Put the phone down, turn off the notifications, and just be with me for a while. Today, we are going to do something different. We are going to perform an autopsy on success. We are going to take a scalpel to the mindset of the wealthy and separate it, layer by layer, from the mindset of the middle class and the poor. I've been spending a lot of time recently with the work of Keith Cameron Smith. And if you don't know Keith, you need to understand that this isn't a guy who just theorizes from an ivory tower. He's a guy who built it, lost it, learned it, and rebuilt it. He wrote a specific text, created in a burst of inspiration over just 7 days, that was originally meant as a legacy letter to his children. He wanted to leave them a blueprint. He felt a spiritual responsibility, a destiny even, to say, "Here is what works. Here is what fails. Don't guess." And that brings us to the core of our conversation today. We are going to walk through the distinctions he laid out. And I want you to listen to this not just as financial advice, but as a diagnostic test for your own brain. Where do you sit on this spectrum? Because, as Keith says, where you start is not where you have to end. Let's start with the foundation. The absolute bedrock. It's about time. If you want to know how much money someone has, or more importantly, how much money they will have, ask them what they are thinking about. Not what they are thinking about, but when they are thinking about. Smith breaks this down into 5 classes of thinking, and it is terrifyingly accurate. At the bottom, you have the very poor. What is their time horizon? Day to day. Sometimes hour to hour. It is purely survival. How do I eat today? How do I get through this shift? It is a state of high stress and zero forward visibility. Then you have the poor. They've graduated to week thinking. The classic paycheck to paycheck cycle. Their mental energy is consumed by the friction of Friday. If I can just make it to Friday, I get paid, I can breathe for 2 days, and then the anxiety starts again on Sunday night. Then comes the middle class. This is where most people get stuck. They think month to month. Why? Because that is how the system is designed. The mortgage is due monthly. The car note is due monthly. The credit card bill is due monthly. The middle class seeks comfort. They want a nice house and a nice car, and they structure their entire mental capacity around maintaining those monthly payments. They aren't trying to survive, they are trying to be comfortable. But then you cross the threshold into the rich. The rich think year to year. They aren't worried about this month's mortgage. They have reserves for that. They are looking at annual tax cycles, asset appreciation, and business trends over the next 12 months. They seek freedom, not comfort. And finally, the very rich. These are the decade-to-decade thinkers. They are planting trees they might never sit under. They are structuring estate trusts, generational wealth transfers, and 20-year business visions. Why does this matter? Why am I harping on this? Because patience is an asset. Haste is a liability. The poor and middle class want it now. They buy the TV on credit now because they want the comfort now. The rich practice delayed gratification. They are willing to live like others won't today, so they can live like others can tomorrow. It's the ability to suffer a little bit in the present for a massive payoff in the future. If you are constantly putting out fires today, you cannot build a house for tomorrow. You have to extend your time horizon. Now, let's move to the second layer. If time is the canvas, words are the paint. Smith has this brilliant distinction: the rich talk about ideas. The poor talk about gossip. It sounds harsh, right? But audit your last 5 conversations. What were they about? There is a hierarchy here. Small people talk about other people. Did you hear what she did? Can you believe he wore that? It's gossip. It's criticism. It is negative energy that creates absolutely zero value. Average people talk about events. Did you see the game last night? Did you see the news? Did you hear about the election? Great people, wealthy people, talk about ideas, concepts, solutions. What if we tried this? How does that business model work? I have an idea for a new service. Here is the irony that Smith points out, and it hits you like a punch in the gut. The rich own the things that the poor talk about. Think about it. The poor and middle class spend their time talking about sports teams, movie stars, and car models. Who owns the sports teams? Who produces the movies? Who builds the car companies? The rich. The rich create the events that the masses consume. If you want to change your tax bracket, you have to change your conversation. Words are the rudder of your life. If you are constantly complaining, which Smith calls self-cursing, you are steering your ship into the rocks. If you say, I can't afford it, your brain stops working. It accepts defeat. If you ask, how can I afford it? Your brain starts working on a solution. It shifts from a period to a question mark. That is the power of language. And this bleeds into how we handle change. This is distinction number 8. The poor are conservative. I don't mean politically. I mean they want to conserve the status quo. They fear change. Change represents a threat to their survival or their comfort. So they stay in jobs they hate, relationships that are toxic, and cities that are dying, because the known hell is better than the unknown heaven. The rich are progressive. They embrace change. They realize that you cannot grow without change. Every time the economy shifts, or technology changes, the rich see it as an opportunity to create new value, while the poor see it as a reason to panic. So, we've covered time, talk, and change. Now, I want to take you deeper into the internal psychology. We need to talk about risk, failure, and the fear of looking stupid. This is from the second chunk of Smith's wisdom, and it is arguably the most important emotional hurdle you will face. The poor play not to lose. The rich play to win. Imagine a soccer team. If the goalie and all 10 players stand in the goal box and just block shots, they might not lose 10-0. They might hold it to a 0-0 draw. But they can never, ever win. You cannot score a goal if you are defending your own net. Most people manage their money like that goalie. They are terrified of losing $1. They keep it in a savings account, losing value to inflation because they are playing not to lose. The rich understand that you have to put the ball in play. You have to risk the ball to score the goal. But what happens if you miss? What happens if you fail? This is the fork in the road. The poor see failure as a stop sign. I tried to start a business once. It didn't work. Therefore, I am not a business person. They attach the failure to their identity. The rich see failure as a teacher. It's just data. I tried to start a business. It failed because I didn't understand marketing. Okay, I need to learn marketing, and then I'll try again. Smith talks about the fear of rejection. We are social animals. We want to be liked. But here is the cold, hard truth he delivers. The desire for success must be stronger than the desire to be liked. He gives us the 1/3 rule. No matter what you do, 1/3 of people will love it, 1/3 will hate it, and 1/3 won't care. If you cure cancer, someone will be mad you put oncologists out of business. You cannot please everyone. Wealthy people accept this. They don't need the approval of the masses. They need the respect of their peers and the results of their efforts. There was a study done on people over 90 years old. They asked them, if you could live your life over, what would you do differently? The number one answer? I would take more risks. The gap between I should have and I did is the Grand Canyon of regret. Don't die on the I should have side. But how do you take risks intelligently? You don't just gamble. You educate yourself. This leads us to the concept of lifelong learning. The poor graduate from school and say, "I'm done. No more books. No more tests." They see education as a chore that they finished. The rich see education as the fuel for their engine. Smith notes that if you walk into a millionaire's home, you will almost always find a library. If you walk into a poor person's home, you will find a big television. Keith shares his own story here. He spent over $100,000 on seminars, books, and coaching. That sounds like a lot of money, right? But he views it as an investment, not an expense. He talks about a $25 book that gave him the courage to start. Then a $200 seminar that gave him a tactic to make $100,000. Then a $4,000 program that helped him make $200,000. The ROI on specialized knowledge is infinite. But here is a warning: free advice is the most expensive advice in the world. If you take money advice from your broke brother-in-law, it will cost you a fortune. You have to pay for quality mentorship. Just like Tiger Woods has a swing coach, you need a wealth coach. You need to be around people who are playing the game at a higher level than you. Now, let's get into the mechanics. The nuts and bolts. We need to talk about the difference between wages and profits. This is the Phi Thuong Bat Pu concept. Without business/trade, there is no wealth. If you work for a wage, an hourly rate, or a salary, you are trading time for money. The problem is, you have a finite amount of time. You can only work 24 hours a day. Your income is capped by the clock. Profits, however, are scalable. Profit is the difference between what it costs to create something and what you sell it for. Keith's life story is a masterclass in this evolution. Listen to this progression. In elementary school, he didn't just mow lawns. He sold cinnamon toothpicks. He bought the oil for $10, dipped the toothpicks, and sold them for a $20 profit. He learned the mechanic of buy low, add value, sell high. In middle school, he resold chewing gum. He turned his $3 lunch money into $7.50 a day. In high school, while his friends were working for minimum wage, let's say $5 an hour, he was diving into golf course ponds to retrieve balls. He could make $50 in 2 hours. He realized that dirty, difficult work that others refused to do paid a premium. Then he moved to the Freon trade. He bought our 12 Freon for $180 and sold it for $210. One day, the price spiked, and he made $500 in a single day. But the real leap happened when he got a mentor. He wanted to be a pro golfer. His mentor told him, "Keith, it'll take you 6 years to make money at golf. You need cash flow now." So, Keith opened a used furniture store. He went from making $20,000 a year to $50,000. Then he optimized. He realized futons were selling faster than bedroom sets. He switched his niche. He moved to a better location. He jumped to $100,000 a year. Eventually, he took those profits and moved into real estate, buying 7 houses and hitting a net worth of $1 million. Do you see the trajectory? He never relied on a boss to give him a raise. He created his own raises by increasing his profits. Wages grow incrementally. Profits grow exponentially. And before we move to the final structural piece, we have to touch on the spirit of this. Generosity. You might think, I'll be generous when I'm rich. No. You become rich by being generous. It's the abundance mindset again. Keith tells a story about tipping. He's eating a $5 sandwich, served by a 19-year-old kid. He leaves a $5 tip. A 100% tip. Why? Because it made the kid's day, and it made Keith feel like a king. It reinforced to his own subconscious. I have enough. I have more than enough. If you are stingy, you are telling the universe and your own brain, resources are scarce. I have to hoard. That is a poverty signal. Generosity is a wealth signal. Okay, let's bring this home with the third chunk of wisdom. We need to talk about the financial engine and the trap of the salary. Smith argues that the middle class is trapped in a rat race. They wake up, go to work, pay bills, and repeat. They focus on increasing their salary. But a salary is a trap for two reasons. 1. Taxes. As your salary goes up, your tax bracket goes up. You are working harder, but the government is taking a bigger bite. 2. Dependence. If you have a high salary, you are terrified of losing that job. You become a slave to the employer. Remember the pilots after September 11th? Huge salaries, gone overnight. The rich focus on increasing assets. Now, we need to redefine some words here. You might think your house is an asset. Your car is an asset. Keith, borrowing a bit from the Kiyosaki school of thought, says, no. An asset is something that puts money in your pocket whether you work or not. It generates passive income. Stocks, bonds, real estate, a business that runs without you. A liability is something that takes money out of your pocket. Your mortgage, your car loan, your credit card debt. The rich play a different game with taxes, too. And this is critical. The poor and middle class follow this formula. Earn - pay taxes - spend what is left. The government gets paid first. The rich follow this formula. Earn - spend - pay taxes on what is left. They use corporations. They earn money, then they spend that money on business expenses, computers, cars, travel, dinners, all legitimate business costs. Then, they pay tax only on the net profit that remains. It is a completely different mathematical equation. So, what do you do? You're listening to this, and maybe you have a job. You have a salary. Do you quit tomorrow? No. That's foolish. That's short-term thinking. You use your salary to buy assets. You become a dual-class citizen for a while. You work your day job to survive, and you build your side business to get rich. Keith is a big proponent of network marketing or starting a small service business. Why? Because the barrier to entry is low. You don't need $1 million to start. You need sweat equity. You need to learn how to sell. You need to learn how to handle rejection. It is a training ground. But here is the final, most dangerous trap. The lifestyle creep. When you start making that extra money from your side hustle, or you get that raise, what do? The middle class buys a bigger car. They move to a bigger house. They increase their expenses to match their income. They stay at zero. The rich have discipline. They do not increase their standard of living until their passive income, not their labor income, can pay for it. If you want the Porsche, fine. But don't buy it with your salary. Buy a rental property, and use the cash flow from the rental property to pay the lease on the Porsche. That is how the wealthy play the game. So, let's zoom out. Let's look at the whole picture we've painted today. It starts with responsibility. You have to accept that you are where you are because of the choices you've made. It moves to time. Stop looking at Friday. Start looking at the next decade. It changes your talk. Stop gossiping. Start discussing ideas. It requires courage. Stop fearing failure. Start using it as data. It demands education. Stop buying entertainment. Start buying knowledge. It shifts your income. Stop chasing a higher wage. Start chasing profits and assets. And finally, it ends in generosity. Because what is the point of having a full cup if you don't pour it into others? Keith Cameron Smith wrote this for his kids because he wanted them to have a legacy. But now you have the blueprint. The question is, are you going to just listen to this podcast, nod your head, and go back to playing video games? Or are you going to turn off this audio, sit down with a blank piece of paper, and design your next 10 years? The distinction isn't in the information. The information is right here. The distinction is in the execution. Think long term. Talk about ideas. Embrace change. And for God's sake, play to win. Thanks for listening. Go make something happen.